The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back. The Mets in the zone. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and one of the two Mets mavens is here. The other one is expected. Here and present is the reliable former crossing guard in PS 148. Got to wear a white, what was it called, Mert? Marty Rose.
Safety belt.
Safety belt. I was so jealous. I think it was the 6th grade or with Nitobe. I was jealous you got to leave class
like
5 minutes early. For everything. Lunch, 5 minutes early.
Right.
Recess, 5 minutes early.
Had to get out there and watch those kids crossing the street.
Right. And it 100%, right? All those years.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Nobody got hit by a Buick.
Nope.
That was the main job. And but I really, truthfully, was jealous of because I have and did have some form of ADD or whatever the hell it was. I have trouble concentrating, and did back then. And thank God it went untreated. They would have given me Ritalin and dulled my being. And but it wasn't easy not having the attention span of a cat. Through life, but you go with what you got, and you play the hand you dealt.
That's exactly right.
And stay within yourself. Don't try to be anything else that you're not. And you are, Marty, the perfect example of the most even-tempered. Remember, we go back to, the second or third grade together.
Second grade, Miss Ross.
Second grade, Miss Ross. And I know you as well as a lot of people, and I find you to be the most even-tempered, like I say, person that ever lived. And that's
saying a lot, man.
It is saying a lot. Air Force, this, that, and the other thing, life experience of meeting people, and and what brings that to mind, you posted a lot of pictures on Father's Day of you and your dad, Bernie and your brother, and you and your dad.
Yep.
And that's exactly where you get it. Jack was the most mellow father in the neighborhood. He just, am I right?
He was pretty mellow, he was.
He didn't get excited much in terms of, you know what I mean?
No.
He
used to watch us. He watched us play ball in the park a lot, and
right.
He worked a lot of swing shift. So,
right.
He wasn't home for dinner, but he'd get up early. He'd do the food shopping. My mom also worked, in the daytime. So, I actually had to learn how to cook if I wanted to get out on a Friday night, So.
You had dinner on the table when your mom got home, just as my mom had dinner on the table for my dad when he got home.
Yeah.
And somebody had to do it. And you were a very well-adjusted family, and nothing but great memories. God, it's how many years? 60? More than 60.
Well, if we were in the second grade, we had to be 7 years old.
Right. So,
yeah, so
wow.
it's a long time ago. Let's say
a long time ago. Let's say that. And it's a Met show. I've mentioned this show on the podcast many times, and no better combination than talking about your dad, talking about the Mets, and talking about my mom. I will repeat the story for anyone who hasn't heard it. Even if you heard it, I'm repeating the story. How about that? Here it goes. It's opening day in 1964, and the Mets are playing the Pirates. It's not just opening day of Shea Stadium.
Yeah.
And this is something that, I mean, it's incredible. We lost the Giants and Dodgers when we were 11. We're about 15 or 16 at this point, and well into our baseball fandom. And finally, we get back a National League team, and it's like I say. They played their first 2 years in the Polo Grounds. They built a stadium in Queens.
Right in our neighborhood, basically.
How close?
10 minutes.
I would say 10 minutes, 2 miles, 2 or 3 subway stops, or on the 7 train. We were the coincidental Met fans. We followed every move. We knew them when they were first born, and this was just cool beans for us. Well, to make a long story short, every kid in the neighborhood, how many kids shared right field with us?
I remember exactly. There was 17 of us from Northridge and Southridge, because we took up an entire row. There's 17 seats in a row in the upper. We're in the upper right field stands, and all of us cutting Newtown High.
Cut Newtown High, but basically with permission from our parents to cut, and except for one. I could not. I didn't have the balls to ask. My grades were so bad, and I was such a pain in the ass to them, that I didn't have the balls to ask to cut school. I figured I'd just cut school. It's like the brothers, the Jesuit brothers. It's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. That's what their whole thing about. And that's how I figured it early on in life with Ma and Pa. So I neglect to tell them and played hooky like we all did. I didn't realize it was I remembered 9.
It was a whole row, the entire row. I mean, a lot of them, a lot of those guys weren't our close friends, obviously, but we knew everybody from the neighborhood. It was just we knew everybody.
That was quite a day, and that day, your dad, working swing shift as he did, was out in the neighborhood going shopping and runs into my mother and recognized her because the shopping cart was welded to her hand when she was 15 years old, and she had it. No, but wasn't really. She was walking, going shopping, and your father's so cool and so nice, and how you doing, Vivian, or whatever he called her, Mrs. Tyko. I don't know what the hell he said, but he says kids have a nice day for a game. My mother goes, what? But she smiles, and they sure do, because she would not best foot forward anything out of the house. No dirty laundry out there. But, nice day for a game. I bet they did. I could just say, yes, he deserves a game because he's such a good student. So I come home and my mother says, "How was school?" And I said, "Not bad," something like that. She wailed off. I'm a 15-year-old kid by then. She knocked me off into left field, whacked me open-handed. I don't want any charges filed on her now that she's dead. They could reopen shit. Exhume the body. Was that the man? Was that the woman who smacked her kid? Anyway, she was pissed and wouldn't sign a note. I had to forge my father's signature to get back into Newtown High School. But what a day. The Pittsburgh Pirates, as I remember, beat the Mets. The only thing I remember is that Joe Christopher was in right field. And I don't know if he was a Met by then because he had been a Pirate or was gonna be a Pirate, but
I think he was.
He was a Met. Okay.
Willie Stargell, of course. Willie Stargell hit the first home run at Shea Stadium.
Now that's appropriate to my baseball memory because Willie Stargell went to high school right here in Alameda, where I've made my home, and they named a street after him in Alameda. Willie Stargell Boulevard when you go by on the bus. I walked the hallowed grounds of Willie Stargell Field out by Encinal High School, which is the high school he and a number of other players. Rollins went to Alameda to Encinal High and pretty cool. So everything
I think the Pirates won 4-3. I think
that day. I don't remember the Mets winning very many games. Over 60 years, over some 60 years. But who's in first place in the National League East?
Well, I'll tell you, it's unbelievable. Considering,
right.
So many injuries. I don't recall ever seeing so many injuries at one time, one after the other. I mean, I don't know how they juggled the rosters to do what they did, but all the guys that filled in played really well.
Were terrific. Absolutely. And some heads were turned. I can tell you that I can't pronounce his name again. Guillorme. Guillorme.
Yeah, Guillorme. I think
he has a spot in the Mets lineup on a regular basis. He'll play somewhere. His versatility will help him. McKinney was another guy who impressed immensely. The center fielder, Alamare, or whatever his name is.
Almora.
Almora.
Yeah. And then,
I'm good with names and stuff.
The two Ilars, Pilar and Villar. VR.
Right.
VR's been great.
Yes.
I don't think they're going to budge him off at third base, no matter who comes back. He's been playing great.
They will, I predict, somehow that JD will either find a way out. They will find a way out for him, or maybe save him till next year to DH.
Or the trade market,
Yeah,
trade market
exactly.
Thing,
And we have to understand now that injuries, these guys are coming back. By the nature of the beast, we can expect more injuries between now and the rest of the year. Sure. So these guys, even if they pass through waivers, the guys that are cut could come back and help later in the year. But no surprise to the three of us. Robert's not here yet or this evening. However, no surprise to us, because we talked about their depth as being a major strength at the beginning of the year. And
but a lot of things we did not know, or at least I didn't know at that time, was these pitchers that they're all of a sudden coming out of the woodwork with in the last week. I mean, McGill and Eichhoff, they both pitched well. They both pitched well, and I pretty much didn't really know either of them. So
was much expected of McGill? Was he expected to be? He's not.
I think he
was
pretty
high up.
He was pretty highly regarded, I think. But when you look at him, 6'7", 250, that's a big dude out there. And
that's right, and he's young.
Yeah, he's 25. Oh, did you hear what they said about his age yesterday?
No.
Okay. He's like 25 years and like 330 days or something like that. The exact same age to the day that DeGrom was when he made his first appearance. 25 years and 330 days.
Whoa. Whoa.
Exactly to the day.
That is an incredible stat. Who compiles stats like that?
I don't know. But, Gary Cohn did mention it yesterday. So.
Wow.
It was on Twitter also. I saw it. So.
Well, any Met fan, let me give a plug for Howie now that you talked about Gary. Any Met fan that wants to know the update on the bullpen, who's available, how many days rest they have, what can be expected of them, can on any given radio broadcast, and I get it, as you know, and you do too, through MLB, we get to hear every game, every broadcast, every team, both home and away, $20 a year. It's a godsend. And he is such an incredible stickler to keep things updated. Every move that's made, he's there. I really admire him. It's not just because he has this history with the Mets. Any recall of anything.
Yeah, he's got it ingrained in his mind. I know. He just remembers everything. He can't possibly have it all written down. He just remembers stuff.
Right. He can't have it. It just comes to him in a certain situation. But beyond that, and I'm not talking nostalgia. I'm talking present day, in the moment of the game. I really admire that. We talked about my cat-like concentration. I could never aspire to something like that, although looking back, it would have been a great way to make a living. gotta say. Anyway, I sent you a chapter earlier on today of the Met chapter in the book that I just completed, and I'm just wondering if you want to chat about that a little bit. Well, I know you read it, and what about it inspired you to ask questions? What did you like? What did you dislike?
Oh, wow. I just
not much to dislike from my best friend.
I like hearing about these old guys. that you spoke to, they come out with things that, some things that we remember about, who they may have been traded for and stuff like that. But it's the inside information that's really great. Like, what did Yogi Berra say to you? I mean, now, people think about Yogi Berra. He's like a caricature, and he's just a funny guy. And what does he know? Well, apparently he knows quite a bit. He knew quite a bit. When you listen to like Duffy Dyer or Hobie Landreth, these guys learned a lot from him, and I get a lot out of reading about these old guys. And there's always this serious stuff and this funny stuff too. When you were talking to the relief pitcher,
Skip Lockwood.
You're talking to him about the day his ride didn't show up to the ball game.
When Seaver was traded.
Yeah,
right.
Seaver was his ride to the ballpark from Connecticut, and he said he had some kind of Porsche, and they outraced the Connecticut police to the ballpark all the time. And one day he's waiting, and no Seaver. Well, what's going on? So he got in his car, and he drove himself, and then he finds out Seaver got traded, and that's why his ride didn't show up. I mean, funny stuff. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, Mert, for you to have this reaction about the Met chapter, say no more. I'm glowing right away.
Oh,
the book will be
great.
out.
Yeah.
The book will be out in August. It's called. I don't even remember what the hell it's called. Something about a vat. Comfortably now it comes to me. In a vat of pine tar. And with Ralph Tyko and George Grimm, and I wrote it, and based on basically the podcast interviews that I've done for 10 years now. Specifically, the last 6 have been in a setting that enabled me, the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, enabled me to talk to folks that I could have only dreamt about when we were kids, making funny phone calls. You reminded me of we called ball players. As a kid, I was 10 and called Sam Huff, who lived in Flushing, close to us.
Book, right?
It was in the phone book, listed number, Sam Huff. Found out he lived in Flushing first, and somehow, and then looked him up, and there was Sam Huff, and I called him, and what reminded me of this was his very high voice. He didn't sound like a tough guy. He just sounded like a regular guy, and I asked him a few questions, and I told him I was honored to speak to the guy that was Sam Huff was. He was in what was the magazine? Sports Illustrated again. The Violent World of Sam Huff.
Oh yeah.
And they showed him with Jimmy Brown, and they beat the shit out of each other, and it was a violent world. And
even so had a TV show. They had a TV show about that also. The Violent World of Sam Huff. Yeah, I believe so. Like a documentary type thing. Yeah.
Must have been. Yes.
I'm sure that they did. Yeah.
It was, and to find out that his athletic ability, his or anyone else's athletic ability, is what it is, doesn't make them any less accessible or more accessible than the next human being. And Doesn't mean they're going to communicate in an interview. Doesn't mean they're not going to communicate. But you got to call. And those early days of, just gave me the guts to be able to produce the network. And that's it. Led directly to it. And while we're at it, leading directly to my passion was your uncle. And talk about him a little bit.
Well, my uncle Murray Rose was at the time when he was working, could have been the top boxing writer in the country. I mean, he covered every big fight, and not just boxing, but working for the
Olympics.
AP.
The Olympics too.
He covered the Olympics on 6 continents. So and he was
a career.
Very well known, and I got to mention that. How well known was he? Well, at his retirement party in 1980 was Pete Rozelle, Bill Gallo, the cartoonist,
right.
Dick Young from the Daily News, and the big boxing promoter of the time, Don King. And I saw him there. When I walked, I saw him sitting there. I said, "Holy mackerel, look at, I couldn't believe it." I know he knew a lot of people, but especially in the boxing world. But the Don King show up at your retirement party. He was very big, and of course he wrote the Sports World magazine with a co-writer of his. You know that.
Oh, that was a great mag. That issue
World,
was dynamic. It recapped all of the All-Star games up until then. And Marty, you remember, and the majority of the folks don't remember, the significance of an All-Star game at that time. Now you hear things like, "If I ain't starting, I ain't departing." That Templeton said that. But, it meant an incredible amount in those days. And the league's image was at stake. They get pep talks from the president of the National League and the American League. And there was a time when they had 2 All-Star games in the same year. And it was truly, the All-Stars were truly an example of the best players, so that we could look back on the All-Star games and determine who were the best players of the era. You can't tell now with the fans voting for their favorite people. It's stupid. Right.
When the players voted for the best players, it was worth something to watch. Because also back then, there was a big rivalry between the National and the American League. There was no interleague play. They didn't really, I don't think, cared for each other much. They only faced each other in the World Series. So it was very big.
And in spring training, there was spring training rivalries.
Right.
Talk about that a second. The Giants and the Indians played each other a lot during spring training. So it's been documented that the Giants knew they held over the Indians. It wasn't a surprise. And the Indians were considered the best. I mean, they won 118 games. They had that incredible pitching staff.
1954 we're talking about.
Right, right. And, Bob Feller and Newhouser and just a whole bunch of folks, Mossy and Leslie.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just incredible. But the Giants played them a lot in spring training, and they had an idea that they'd do well, and they did. It was a Dusty Rhodes Chinese home run miracle in a way. But nevertheless, who's the world champion? As Neil Silver said to me, he said, on the day the Dodgers and the Yankees were going to play in 55 to surpass the last game, Tommy Byrne pitching. And I said to Neil Silver, as of this second, Neil, who's a neighbor of ours and a kid we grew up with, I said, Neil, who, and a Dodger fan, who's the world champion as of this minute? He goes, the Giants. And that's all I remember Neil Silver ever saying that mattered to me. It was actually not, because Neil Silver had other older brothers who were older than, obviously older than us, and taught him something. Like I'm going, when I'm 10, I'm going, Jackie Robinson, 1955, he's all washed up, this, that, and the other thing. And Neil Silver said, he learned it from his brothers, Jackie Robinson right now is better than you'll ever be in your lifetime. What he didn't know, Jackie Robinson could have been dead for 4 years and be better than I would have ever been in my lifetime. But that aside, don't agree that readily, Mert. But that's all right. That's all right. Now that I'm a lefty as well as you are, when we get together, we can have a catch, lefty versus lefty. All right, let's talk a little Mets of today, and tell me what comes to mind when I say that for you. That they've been such an up and down injured team. They had a bad week by anybody's standards. Well,
they split. Let's see, they split
with the
four
Braves.
games. Yeah, with the Braves, and they took 3 out of 4 from the Cubs. So that was good. And then I think
Washington was a disappointment.
Washington, they lose 3 out of 4 to Washington?
Yeah, so. Scherzer killed, as he usually does, killed them. Yeah. But on the good side, on the bad side, Lucchesi went to the DL. They continue to have injuries. But on the good side, they were always coming up with something. And like you said, they got 2 good, strong pitching performances. Which
Peterson turned it around also. He had a couple of bad games, and then right after that, he had a couple of very good games. So, maybe he's found himself. Maybe they discovered something that he was able to correct, because he's been very good the last couple of times out. And Stroman is going to make his next start. He came out of that game, but everything seems to be okay. So he should start probably next Sunday, I guess, against the Phillies. Got DeGrom Saturday, and we got a doubleheader tomorrow, starting at 4:10 Eastern. I'm thinking Walker and Peterson, but I'm not 100% sure, but could be. And look, we're getting performances out of some guys, like we had said earlier. This Eichhoff and McGill pitch very well. The bullpen is hanging in there. They're getting so many innings. They're getting worked to death. and Familia's on the injured list now. But
Lugo seems to be back.
Yeah, Castro is the pitching Castro to death. I think he needs a couple of days off to get back to what he was earlier. But if they get to Diaz has been doing a great job.
He had a couple of hiccups against Washington, but you know what? He has been not just three out saves, like 4 or 5 outs.
Yeah, 5 outs the other day for the second time. Yeah, so
very impressive.
He's been really good, and the lineup is coming back together.
McCann has been hitting.
Yeah, McCann's been hitting. McNeil's hitting. Lindor has his good days. Dom has his good days. Conforto, first time up yesterday, hard double to right. The only thing I don't like lately is Alonso has not been looking very good. He's fishing for outside breaking balls. He's getting a couple of hits, but like singles, no real power. I don't know what his deal is, but hopefully he turns it around.
How does one get out of a slump generally? By hitting the ball up, making contact, hitting the ball up the middle, this, that, and the other thing. Alonso wants to be in the All-Star game, in the home run derby in the All-Star game. He accepts the challenge of that. I think that's counterproductive. May give him some publicity, may soothe his ego, but in terms of production and in terms of team, I don't see that as good.
Maybe he gets his home run swing back. I don't know.
That could be. That could be. And I sound like an idiot again, but that'll prove me wrong, Mr. Alonso.
Yeah, really.
Just don't turn into Ike Davis for me. That's all I want.
Right.
Nito's hurt.
They put him on. They put him on the IL. Actually, they brought up Mazika a couple of days ago. As soon as Nito got hurt, even before they put him on the IL, they brought Mazika up because they knew Nito couldn't grip the bat or whatever it was. He hurt his hand, so now he's on the IL, and Mazika obviously will catch probably the second game tomorrow. Right. He's the only other catcher they got.
As far as I can figure, they have their starting lineup intact,
except for Nito. Nimmo. I heard they expect to have him back as early as Monday. So that would be the makeup game against Washington on Monday.
Yeah, and reserves are par excellence. Giving us more than expected, and they're keeping us in. And
absolutely.
Not only in, like I say, a lot of makeup games, but just having games in the loss column is nice. Or few games in the loss column. At least your destiny is in your own hands.
They got to take 3 out of 4 from the Phillies, because the Phillies haven't been doing that great. They're just hanging around. So you hope for a split tomorrow and then win the DeGrom and Stroman games. That's the way I look at it.
Yes, and hope that they're not bringing Stroman back too early.
I don't think so. I think he seems to be fine. I don't think that's going to be a problem. They wouldn't let him go if he was hurt. So.
All right, Mert.
Yep.
That was an excellent show, fun. I enjoyed it. I got to think about your dad and your uncle. And
Great, thanks.
Why your uncle? You didn't take the bait to lead us in. Your uncle provided us with what my family called guest seats. We had seats in the garden on a regular basis that you would not believe, and that combined with the Geo thing of 75 cents to sit in the balcony when you didn't have the great seats.
Right.
We saw some ball, and it wasn't just pro ball. It was holiday festivals.
Oh yeah.
College athletes that Indiana, Ohio State, Cincinnati, Dayton with Jim Alusi and what have you.
Back in those days, the Garden and other places would give comp tickets to the press, and obviously they had guys covering the games, but they had extra tickets too. And if you happen to, know somebody in the sports department, you might be able to get a few tickets here and there. So
here and there.
My uncle, it was a big wheel in the sports department, and he saw my dad a lot because my dad worked there, not in the sports department, but he worked there. So he came home with tickets quite often, and we benefited.
Yes, we did. And so hats off to the AP. I just want to tell you, put your uncle's career in perspective. Hal Bach, who was the baseball writer for the AP for 43 years, credits your uncle with being his mentor. And so just to give you an idea now, Hal Bach, not just because he's a fellow podcaster on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, but Hal Bach is iconic.
Oh, yeah.
So putting things into perspective about your uncle. And
well, he worked there since the 1930s, So until he retired in 1980. So he had a very long, terrific career.
Yes.
Yep.
Thanks, Mert, for another great show. Thanks for listening, everybody. It's Mets in the Zone, Comfortably Zoned Radio. We missed Robert Cole. He'll be back next week, I'm sure. Be well, everybody. Adios and happy trails.
Good night.
Good night.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.